We're in the grip of a male mental health crisis. It's the biggest killer of men under 50 now is suicide, not cancer or heart disease. And that's just a horrific stat. The thing that's driving the male mental health crisis is that men don't talk about their mental health and seek help. That's not really a generalization. That's played out in all the stats. Why is that? And that was me. When I had depression, I didn't tell anyone. I recognized myself in that. But then I've got all these tools that can help. And it was like, okay, well, what is driving this male mental health crisis? So it's a lack of communication. It's a communication issue. And men can't communicate what they're feeling. Okay, well, I'm a communication expert. Well, when I think about the Undateables, or more recently about homelessness called 60 Days on the Streets, rather than do a documentary about homelessness, I put a survival guy and he was surviving on the streets. You know, he's called Ed Stafford. And it's like, okay, look, Ed, you're ex-military, male, adopted, suffer mental health problems, all risk factors for ending up on the streets. Let's do your show on the streets of London, Manchester and Glasgow over British winter. And that became like Channel 4's biggest new hit series for 5 years and ended up with some legislative change and quite effective change. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to do this. So what would I do with kind of male mental health? It's like, okay, well, how do we meet people where they're at, not where you want them to be? Well, if they're not talking, don't just tell them to talk, although we want men to talk. Yeah. And we encourage it. We have men's group and all that, but there's a first step. Telling people to change their behavior doesn't work. That's not how behavioral change works. Just telling people to do stuff doesn't work. So where are they? Well, they're on their phones and they're not talking. So let's build something that's on their phones and doesn't require them to talk in the first instance. So it's like a digital front door. And on there, we can have all these tools that I built up over the course of my whole life. Right. So meditation, breathwork, visualization, but it's got to be stigma-free. Because the reason that men do not seek help for their mental health is because the stigma and the baggage around what it is to be a man, which has come a lot more into public consciousness recently, the good and bad. We interviewed 200 men. We said, why aren't you using the things on the market like Calm or Headspace or going to the doctors or a therapist? 3 reasons came back, 2 female, 2 hippiest. There's nothing wrong with me. So it's like, okay, let's just look at over 200 people, only 3 answers. So it's like, let's look at that. So men, in the main, the man in the street, my mates, my background, don't use Calm, for example, because they see it as for women. Yes. Number 2, things are too hippie-ish. That's a real kind of turn off for most guys. Now, I'm a complete hippie, obviously, but equally, that's, they might see something like Headspace or set by a monk. It's not for me, too hippie-ish, whatever, And that third thing, well, I don't want to go to the doctors because there's nothing wrong with me. Yeah. And in most cases, men who are struggling with their mental health, it won't be a mental health illness and all the stigma that comes with that, is that life can be hard and the things that happen to us can be really challenging. And that's actually what drives the suicide crisis, not mental illness, but people not being able to cope with life events and tell people and ask for help. That's it. That's what happens with men. So I'm like, okay, right. All right. Well, let's build something that's just for men. Yeah. And all the science shows that works better anyway. That is not hippie-ish. So we use all those tools, breathwork, meditation, visualization, but we co-design it with Imperial College. It's based on a full-scale RCT trial. There's Bear Grylls as the co-founder. We've got all kind of, great coaches on there. So it's all really science-based, research-based, and there's nothing wrong with me. We try and talk about mental fitness and make it aspirational and, break down the stigma. So I came up with this concept. Okay, well, this is how we can tackle mental health, but it's not going to be a TV show. It's got to be like an app.